But right now, and this is the fun part of the tournaments, we don't know. And especially the first one of the year, man, I mean, careers are made and lost on matches like this.
We're gonna do this tournament some justice. We're gonna walk through the women's draw here in part one, and then we'll take a little break, come back, knock out the men's draw as well. Lucky you people at home, you might be getting 2 episodes today, because I feel like we're gonna kick out and go long form today. So Torrey, let's go quarter by quarter here. We'll start with Aryna Sabalenka's draw. Right, Aryna has it feels like obviously she's the defending champion. It feels like she hasn't lost a match. Did she win Australia? Yeah, she beat Rybakina in 2023, and then won it again last year, 2024. Is that right? And then she's back. Yep, slotted in the U.S. Open as well. So she's she won the most recent Grand Slam.
Right. And she's money on hard court. We just have to say she's money on hard court. Her game matches up well to it. She's got the big serve, the big forehand, and a really nice backhand. She controls court. She used to fight herself in moments like this. She doesn't anymore. She's solid. I expect to see her, like we saw Serena when she started really catching her groove in the 2000s. She starts to trust herself more, and she's starting to just allow the player on the other side of the net to wilt under the pressure of you can't beat me. I'm not worried about myself more. I think we're starting to see it. We're seeing a very emotionally mature Aryna. She is my favorite player, has been for a while, especially after Serena started kind of a little bit going into her twilight. I had been a huge, because I felt like she was in a sense the we're going to call her the Ivana Drago version of her, of some old Rocky 3 lore. She was just the better version of her, or the today's version, if you will. I won't say better version of her. Her quarter, Alvin, to me, is wide open. I'm looking at her. There's not really anybody that I could see in this draw that that would beat her on anything but a bad day. I'm looking at Donna Vekic. I'm looking at Mira Andreeva. I'm looking at my girl Zhang Qinwen. I always hate saying her name. But each of these players, while they're good, I just don't see her being upset except for a bad day. Speaking of a bad day, she has one of the toughest first round matches in the history of number one seeds. I'm looking at this. So with all that said, now let's say the one. How in the world does she draw a former Grand Slam winner in Sloane Stephens?
Look, let's talk about Sloane Stephens for a bit here. And she patron saint Sloane Stephens. Sure. Love her.
Black tennis. I mean, and et cetera. I mean, so girl is just love Sloane.
Yeah, 10 years. Yeah, has won a Grand Slam. But here's the thing, and I saw this at the U.S. Open when she lost her first round match to, I think, it was either An Lee or Lulu Sun. It might have been Lulu Sun, and I saw Sloane dejected. Right, she was up, and then like it fell apart. I think she was up like maybe 5-0 in the first set, and then the wheels came off, and she lost in straights. Sloane hasn't won a match since the first round of Wimbledon. Yeah, so. I'm of the school of thought is I'm less concerned about your resume and more concerned about your present day form. My girl hasn't won a match since 4th of July.
I will agree with you on the win. I won't agree with you on easy work. I will also say I look at the draw and I see players like, again, and I love Haley. She played my tournament years ago, Haley Baptiste. If anybody should have drew Aryna Sabalenka, it should have been a lucky loser. Or a qualifier. It should have been a Haley Baptiste. It should have been a, anybody, other than just off of what it is. I get your point about present day form. Heard, noted. But she has won a Grand Slam, Alvin. We're not talking about a lucky loser, a person who's never cracked top 100. The girl has been at the top of the game. By the way, another notable that did not make the seeding is my girl Marketa Vondrousova. which I think was another miss. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah. She also, I think Marketa also hasn't won a match since Wimbledon of last year. That's the kind of Marketa hasn't played a match since Wimbledon. Not hasn't won, hasn't played. So it's it's one of those things where, like, especially on the women's side, you've got a lot of women who have won Grand Slams who are active, right? Who are presently still playing, but that doesn't help you right now. You really have to take
it. Said,
it's a snapshot.
I still feel like it is Sabalenka's draw to come out of. I look at the next 2 or 3 matches she would even run into. I don't see anyone that's really posed too strong of a threat. That said, that lower half of that first quarter looks pretty interesting. Pavlyuchenkova is could be, but hey, you heard it right here. That whole thing, Zhang is going to do well. Obviously, it's the slam of the Asian Pacific, so she's going to have some nice support there as well. But I'm just looking at a lot of that to the topper half outside of Sloane. The bottom half of that first quarter is ripe, man, and there's a lot of good players that come through that.
So I think in this quarter, like my pick to come out of this quarter obviously is Aryna. I think she could. You would look at a match between like Clara Towson and Lena Noskova, and Noskova beat Iga at the U.S. Open last year. I think it was So she's got game. She just hasn't been playing much lately.
Yep.
I think she's coming in a little undercooked. So I don't actually think Towson might take her out of the first round, and then it's going to be pretty straightforward for Aryna after that. Mira Andreeva lurking in the fourth round actually for her to come out of that quarter. I still feel like Mira might not even get there. Like, Buskova is tough. She's real tough. And I think Buskova, she's got big game, and those are the kind of players that Mira tends to struggle with right now. So I actually think Mira's going down in the first round, which is I think it'll make for interesting context of how Aryna will move through this draw. But Aryna hasn't had any trouble with Mira over the last 3 times they've played anyway. So that's kind of my take on that particular quarter. All right, we'll move on to quarter 2. This is Quinn wins. This is Quinn wins draw.
Opinion. The problem? No. Isn't Quinn Win part? Isn't she the top half of the? Isn't she bottom the top half?
She's top half, but she's got this quarter. And if I call the quarters correct, right? It's like, who's going to make the quarterfinals out of this section of the draw? Is that right? So we're looking at
4 different quarters. So I'm saying, if I'm not mistaken, Quinn Win is who your girl might meet in the quarters.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. So you got Cannon, and another tough first round matchup, which is a whole nother talk show. Sophia, Coco. After that, dude, you've got some matchups here, Alvin, that I'm like, wow. Naomi Osaka is in this half. Muchova is in this draw. You've got some of the newer players, Kostyuk. You got Samsonova. You've got Elise Mertens, who is still, again, an older player, but still very good. Obviously, JPEG, my favorite, on down there in the bottom half, the bottom slot of the end of the bottom of quarter 2. There are, in my opinion, 6 people that could legitimately come out of this quarter, and Coco and Goff are still, in my opinion, that's one of the best American rivalries in tennis right now. A girl that could have let's face it, maybe a year or 2 left from playing, and a girl who's still searching for her first slam, and you've got a player who is looking for her second, and quite frankly, to kind of be relevant again at the Grand Slam level. Now that Iga and Aryna have taken form, that is not an easy draw to come out of, and Naomi is still on the rebound, trying to come back and assert her dominance. So an in shape form player like Naomi could in fact be the wrecking ball for the whole draw.
Okay, so we'll tackle this this part of the draw before going. I'm going to go back up to the bottom half of Sabalenka's quarter in a second, but we'll tackle this section here. I think this quarter is like this. I mean, this top half of the second quarter is the quintessential like murderer's row, right? You've got So yeah, you've got Coco's got Sophia Kenin in the first round, which is like Sophia hasn't done much in the last few years since winning her Grand
Yep,
Slam. I don't remember what year she won a Grand Slam or two, but she's tough. I think she drew Iga first round of Australian Open last year and gave her a solid match. A solid, she'll be there. She's not going to beat herself. Like she's
100%.
underpowered, but she's got a champion's mind. She'll be a proper first round match for Coco. And I think if Coco gets through that one in straights, then she's going to be ready to roll for the rest of the event. I do like that section. That section with Muhova, yep, Osaka, and Garcia, right? Like Naomi is playing well. I watched her, and I think it was Auckland. She made the finals, pulled out in the final after being up a set. A little bit of a niggle, but it looks like she's going to be good to go next week. But she's got a tough first round. Caroline Garcia is no joke. Yep. Caroline beat her in the first round of the Australian Open last year, as she was on her comeback, playing well. So whoever gets through that match is 100%. Also going to draw likely Muhova in the next round. And as the leader of the Carolina Muhova Appreciation Society, that's the kind of match you clear your schedule for, whichever way it goes.
Bencic, Ostapenko, Badoza section of that same deal that I think is the, you've got Bencic, another former Grand Slam winner. You've got your girl. I can't say enough about Paul. I think Paula Badoza is a great player. I think she is one of those players that has the ability to beat anybody on their bad day. And I don't want to put that as a bad thing. It's just to say your chances of having a not so great day is always there. And she's that kind of player that can take you out. I think Bencic, is right there. And if she's back healthy again, which she had been for a number of years, has been Roncha Roos is later in this thing in that lower half of that draw. And as is Elise Mertens. I think JPEG actually lucked out by not getting these players until later on, third, maybe fourth round in the Australian Open. But that section right there, Goff and Pegula have got a great option to get past their first match-ish. After that, dude, the middle part of quarter two is rough.
Well, let's go back to the bottom half of quarter one real quick, because I want to give that a little bit of space, because I think we're overlooking how this is going to play out. So this is where you've got Dina Schneider is kind of at the top of that section, and then Queen Wen is on the bottom of that section. And I guess on paper you would expect Queen Wen to kind of pop out there and meet Arena in the top half of that, but Dina Schneider, I think she won like 5 tournaments last year, right? First year on tour full time, won a tournament on all 3 surfaces. Not many people actually got that done last year. Okay. I do believe Carlos Alcaraz is the only other player to have done that last year, right? So I think that's a really strong quarter. I actually think Dina's going to come out of that quarter and beat Queen Wen to end up meeting Sabalenka to take the top half of that quarter. So that's just kind of like I didn't want us to move too far without me getting that out there. I think she's going to go through. I think she's going to take care of Donna in the third round. I just feel really good about her. Like, I love a lefty. I love what I've seen from a standpoint of like progressive improvements. Like every 3 months she's making a jump.
I've watched her very little, so I hate to be a Chris Everett on this one and not do my homework, but I will say that I have not watched her as much as I would like, and that's why I'm going to defer to you on this one. I will also tell you that, in my opinion, you've got 3 players on the lower half on that second quarter that are former top players that, if healthy, between Vondrousova, Bencic, that I think are absolute, and obviously, aside from Coco and Jessie Pegula, that I think could be absolute stunners, and that will match up to be a very, very solid third, fourth, and obviously quarterfinal round in the tournament before we even get to the other half of the draw. This quarter two is stacked. I mean, it is absolutely stacked. I mean, I forgot Naomi Osaka. So those 3 players, right? How can I forget that one? But those 3 players right there, dude. I mean, you've never seen, and there is not bold ink on any of their names. You see what I'm saying? So I'm just saying that is, man, you talk about
Right.
icebergs.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a Titanic seed, buddy, you better slow down and take your time going through those straits right there, because each one of those icebergs has got titanium tips on them. I mean, just saying.
So let me run this by you then. All right. So if we move down into the section of the draw where
Yep,
Badosa would be in the kind of the top
yep.
half of that 16th,
Hers to
and
lose for sure.
it's JPEG's section, right? So for hers to lose, what if I told you? So you see that bottom part where you've got potentially a second round matchup with Elise Mertens, right? Elise Mertens is a true professional. Let me tell you this: that Elise Mertens is 3-0 lifetime against JPEG.
That's right.
Now we've talked about blood in the water, right?
I'm with you.
That's not nothing, and they're both playing good ball right now. Like I think in a warm up event as of yesterday, they were both in the semifinals of the two different events happening leading up to the Grand Slam. So and I think actually Jessie won, and she's in the final today.
This is my point.
So they're both in form.
This quarter two is ridiculous. I'm just telling you, and I see. I love your take on this, because you've done your homework on some of these newer players and some of the recent matchups. I'm just looking at a player who's been there, that knows how to weather some storms if they get a match or two under their belt. And I'm going to go back to those same three: Naomi, okay, Bencic, and Vondrousova. These three know if they can get some matches under their belt, they can rekindle the fire. Some of the other players are going to have a little bit of tough time getting through. The only thing I will say to you about Elise Mertens and Jessie Pegula is that I feel like the ball Jessie's playing right now is pretty big, and the moment she's playing for is bigger. I don't see her in an early round match being Jessie, if anything, has been consistent. There's always a bad matchup. We know that Jessie is not the fastest player out there on the court, but when she's striking the ball clean, and it is a hard court tournament, let's be honest, Plexipave or Rebound Days, whatever they're playing on these days, I think it's Plexipave these days, it will only suit her game. And if she has anything to say about it, the striking of Jessie Pegula will win out. No different than it will be for Aryna Sabalenka on the top half. Of course, I love Jessie Pegula, so I'm a very big fan. I also would love to see her play against a player like her, and as that semi comes into play, because I don't think, besides Coco, there's another player that can out-hit or respond to Sabalenka other than JPEG. So that's another reason why I'm kind of hoping, because when you start looking at people that can just go toe-to-toe, Coco has the speed and the racket speed to handle, especially on the backhand side. JPEG can do it on both sides. Mind you, not as fast. But if there's a person that can absolutely step up and strike toe-to-toe with Aryna, it's Jessica Pegula. So that's another thing which most players on this whole top half of the draw really can't say. You really can't say that about a good chunk of them.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate. Like on two faces, right? One, that I don't think JPEG's gonna get a chance to play that match, because I don't look, man. And it's unfortunate that number two, that I have to say negative things about Jessica Pegula in another podcast episode. It's not like that. I love Jessie, and I think what she's done, especially in the last 4 years, is like really paved the way for like this is how you carry yourself as a professional tennis player. Like, she is professional through in and throughout. I have a really tough time. If she's going to beat someone for the first time in her career, I'd love for her to have 2 or 3 matches under her belt, not one. It's one match. They're going to play in the second round, like 2 days after her.
You're talking about Elise.
I don't like. And the fact that I know Elise Mertens, I think Elise Mertens is actually going to.
We're going to agree disagree on that one. I am worried about the Podolska match for her down the road, and I'm looking forward to a possible Ostapenko and Muchova matchup. And then, of course, and I love Layla. She's been doing some great things, trying to come back from that, from where she was. I know another one of your lefties. I just don't know if she has the firepower to really take down. Should Coco take care of business against Sophia? I just don't. That would be a great warm up match to me. And then, so that matchup to me, as I say, the bottom part of the bottom section of the top part of quarter two, it just looks like if she can survive the first match, I think Coco has got a little bit of smoother sailing. But, buddy, I would love to see a Naomi Osaka matchup. I think they're going to match. Let me look at my draw here. Nope, she may match up to Ostapenko first, and then that would match up to Coco. That would be a match there, bro. That would be a match. Woo. Can you imagine a fourth round matchup with and by the way, I think your girl would match up to her if I'm not mistaken. I think Mahova would match up to her at some point in the third round if that were to come through.
Well, let's look at this, right? So if
Yep.
like, let's take Caroline Garcia, for instance, right? If Caroline Garcia were to come out of this section and make the quarters, she would have to beat 3 Grand Slam champions likely to do it, right? She'd have to beat Osaka in the first round. She'd have to beat, she'd play 2-time finalist or 1-time finalist Mahova in the second round. She'd have to play Ostapenko in the third round, and then probably Coco Gauff in the fourth round, right? So you're talking about, like, that's a
lot to do with in a tournament.
I think that's the best part about the women's game right now.
Not in your quarter, right?
Yeah,
right.
Seriously. What are we talking about? What are we talking about? That's nasty, and I love it. I love it so much. Okay, let's roll down to Elena Rybakina's section, right? So you got Rybakina, in the top part of that section, Danielle Collins on the bottom of that section. I'm gonna say a thing about Danielle. Danielle's on notice right now. Like, she had a great run starting on the clay court last year. She did well after. So Indian Wells, Miami, Charleston, Madrid, I think, or maybe the one before Madrid was her kind of her hot spot last year, where she went solar, right? And firmly put her on everyone's, like, oh, she's legit. And more than the player she is in the tennis that she was playing, people got a chance to get to know her as a person. And I think that is that's what we want for the people who are leading from the front of the sport, to bring more people, more eyeballs to the sport. Is you gotta get to know the people and fall in love with the people and the stories, to then start watching and appreciating the tennis, right? But post Olympics, as she was moving towards her impending retirement, which ended up being, she obviously changed course, and she's coming back this year, which is great. It's gonna be fantastic to have her on tour again for another year, at least another year. But her tennis has to, I think, follow everything else that we're getting from her. We're getting a lot of Danielle on social media, a lot of Danielle throwing shade at Iga, a lot of off-court Danielle stuff right now. I need more on-court Danielle wins right now. So I'm putting her on notice. I need her to pick it up so that we can continue to pay attention to the person that she is.
I will,
because no one listens.
That's a strong statement right there. Wow.
I said that. She's not saying she's a loser, but if we continue to not win tennis matches, then you become like a bit of a curious,
right? Not doing the thing, and I think that's 100%, and I think that's a great
doing
point
the thing
to
that you
mention.
get paid to
I
do.
will say this, and again, I maybe not as harsh with you and Danielle. I will say this. I feel like it is this is Rybakina's draw to come through. I will say that don't sleep on Yasmin. Jasmine is. Did you know Jasmine's dad or mom is Polish and from Ghana, Mr. Ghanaian himself? I didn't know if you knew that. Her grandfather's from Ghana. I didn't know that. Anyway, obviously born and raised in Italy, and obviously dad's Italian. But just another talk show. The match that I am looking forward to. There's several in this quarter. Of course, anytime Taylor Townsend's playing, I love Taylor. Caroline Dolehide, still a good player. I am looking forward to the Cirstea and Svitolina match. I think that is an old school match right there. A couple of players who have been playing for a while that are both in the. That's a great matchup to me. I'm looking forward to Madison Keys playing Ann Lee. I think that's another great match that's right there. And of course, when I look at this, as the way this whole draw is kind of coming out, I'm looking forward to down the road, of course, watching to see who will play Jasmine. Jasmine, in my opinion, playing a possible Taylor Townsend could be a great second round match. You know what I mean? As the two of those two kind of start to kind of heat up, and Rebecca, to her credit, she's got, in my opinion, she's got a decent. They took care of the top 8 seeds. Let's be honest. I think if you were a 9 through 16, whoo, buddy, you're in a tough spot. But to me, I've heard Rebecca has got Goran as a coach now. She's heard some weird stuff though. I heard that she got Goran, and then I heard she wants the old coach back, and there was some abuse issues. I'm not sure what happened with all that. I don't know what happened.
Yeah. So the high level of that one is her coach. There was a lot of chatter on tour over the last 2 years or so about her coach being somewhat verbally abusive and somewhat of a problem on the grounds, on the premises. Never, and the thing is, like Elena always said, no, he's been great to me. He's not abusive to me, and that's their one-on-one relationship, right? Like he works for her. He does not work for the WTA tour, right? And neither does she.
Right, which you appreciate on the overall, right? If a girl's 16 and got an abusive father, I'm happy somebody can step in. That goes back to the Yelena Dokic years from years ago.
Right.
I mean, I totally get that. I lived through that. I understand it.
Exactly.
But at the same time, I'm like, at some point now, let's anyway, it was just drama. I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
So she fired him towards the back end of last year, and it was also announced that he was under investigation by the WTA and I think provisionally suspended from coaching on the tour, as in he can't be credentialed to come to tour events. So if you're not credentialed, you can't be on the practice courts, right? You can't be in the players box, all that stuff. So he could buy a ticket, So that's kind of the whole loop. And so the whole thing is she hired Goran right before tour finals at the end of the year. And then they come to Australia. Things are getting started. The United Cup getting, Goran's in the box for United Cup. And then after United Cup, Elena herself just announced her coach is coming back. He's back on the team. And everyone's like, what the?
Right.
And so the Australian Open's like, well, we're still not going to give him a credential. Because he's still under investigation. But there's some weirdness going around there. But I think Elena Rebecca and I was kind of putting all that into consideration. I was looking at her year last year and how she, had a lot of withdrawals in the middle of tournaments. But when she didn't withdraw, she's solid, man. She is the Marat Safin of women's tennis. If she's there and she's playing, she could damn near beat anyone on any day, cleanly. Embarrassing you. And she played a hell of a match.
She is Iga's kryptonite, in my opinion. And for that reason alone, I like it. And would have been on hard court too, which Iga has not always been the best on the hard court, just with her game. We know she's a little underpowered for when you're comparing her to, right? When you're comparing her to the Sabalenkas and the JPEGs of the world, she has certainly had the ability to beat her on clay. That's a routine match. Hard court, not so much. And I think that's the thing, and Rebecca is. It'll be a great match to watch. I'll see it like that.
Yeah, and I think Rebecca potentially against my personal kryptonite, Madison Keys. I pick Madison Keys more than anyone should. I love Madison. I feel like she's my long lost little sister, and I always want good things for her. And I feel like if they meet in the fourth round, that will break me. That match will break me. But those are nice problems to have.
This last 2 or 3 years, so that'd be a great match for her to have. Again, you're talking about a Grand Slam finalist right here. Again, there's a lot lurking, man. There's a lot lurking, and if everybody's healthy, I really like. That's what I said. I like that matchup with her and Ann Lee. That's a good match for her. You know what I mean? For both of them, but especially for Madison. That's a bit of a known entity, but you got some players there. I like a lot of the Americans in this half of the draw. Each of them have, in my opinion, you don't want to say winnable matches, very favorable matchups, depending on who you are. I really like a lot of the things coming out of this, So it's kind of like I said, and I look and by the way, one Ons Jabeur is also a non-seed, so that's another. I'm just saying you got all these, right?
Ooh,
So
yeah. Oh, we're gonna get to ons. We're gonna get to
I'm
ons
saying
because I think
I'm telling you, man.
yeah
And I look at
that's
some of these
that's
seeds, and
oh,
again,
that's good.
I'm not familiar with Diana Yastrzemska. You know what I mean? But how she got seeded 32 over Ons and over other players like that, I'm like, dude, I don't know what the seeding criteria is, but if we're going from a hard stop at the end of, as you said, the United Cup or whatever, then everything else ramps up from there, then so be it. But man, does being a Grand Slam champ not get you honorable mention? I'm like, or at least a finalist? I'm like, there's no question that Madison perhaps should not be seated.
It is what it
I'm
is.
telling you right now, that is somebody's horrible draw. Ons Jabeur has played better tennis as of late more than Madison has. And I get the rankings, I get the points. I'm talking about in recent, and don't get me started on Wawrinka on the men's draw. That is somebody's tough draw. I remember a few years back, Azarenka drew Serena in the second round of, I want to say, of Australia. And and I remember the match of saying, man, not only do I feel gypped that that's a second round match, that's a semi match, and when, 5 years or 8 years ago in their prime. But it was one of those matches where I just feel like because of the way coverage goes, you're not going to give that match its due because it comes so early in the draw. And they're, as you know from your work at Turner, they just simply have to cover other matches. It's like a Sunday when you got 8 teams that are all pretty good. You only have time to go over highlights. You can't talk about how strong the matchups are. This is not Monday night or Sunday night or Thursday night football, where it's the only match to talk about. So that's my only problem is I feel like some of these matchups are going to almost fade a little bit into, what's the word, ignominy or whatever it is. But that's going to be in that because there's so many other matches to cover, and it'll be on court 17 somewhere in the back corner. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I'm with you.
That's the beauty of it, though. That's the beauty of the Grand Slam. Like, because if you're there on Monday and you've got I mean, you're gonna. I think Naomi versus Garcia is gonna end up finding its way onto one of the smaller stadium courts, just kind of depending on where it gets, how it gets actually scheduled, like who's on the order of play that day. But especially with Naomi being, representing Japan, it is the Grand Slam of the Pacific. I think people forget that it's the Grand Slam of the Asia Pacific, which is Australia and Asia. So it's if you go there, you definitely see that representation. It's like if you go to the new U.S. Open, you're going to see a lot of Americans. If you go to the Australian Open, you're going to see a lot of Asians, and that it's a lot closer, and it's fantastic that part of the world has a Grand Slam, and people hear Australian Open, but there aren't that many people that live in Australia. So, and the only people that are close and the people that are closest are those that are coming from
inside. Go in about 100 miles, and you might just not see a soul. You know what I mean?
There are more kangaroos than people, by a long shot, right? But I want to make sure we finish up the last part of that top half where you would expect Miss Jasmine Paolini to come out of. I feel fourth round for Jasmine Paolini is going to be tricky. I think she's going to get past Taylor. I think I say that with a little bit of trepidation. I think. I mean, at some point you have to look at what Jasmine did last year and go, okay, she's older, right? She's in her late 20s and making that leap from 50, 60 in the world to I now quarterfinal Grand Slams, at the very least. Okay, this is her chance to prove it, that she is legitimately going to be in the conversation. She is the new version of Jessica Pegula, right? Getting past Taylor Townsend in the second round is I think that is a match where, okay, if she plays Taylor and beats Taylor, who presents a lot of problems for a lot of players because she does not play a traditional women's game. She's using a lot of different spins. She's lefty. She's coming in. If your mind can meet your tennis and get through that match, then you're iron sharpens iron. You're going into you're getting into the third round with good tennis under your belt. The lurker there is
Yep.
Pseudo hometown girl Katie Bolter had a good year. I think Katie is the fiance of Alex de Minaur, which this matters only because now she is de
So
facto
she'll be a quote
Australian,
unquote
and
hometown favorite like Kim Clijsters
yeah,
was with
yeah,
Layton Hewitt. Yeah.
exactly. And
Right.
she also has a
Yep. Yeah.
3-0
Well,
lifetime
you
against
said
Desmond Paolini.
you
That's all I'm gonna say.
you've said it.
That's no, sorry, take that back. Take that back. She is, yeah, yeah. No, I misquoted that one actually. Sorry. Katie is 3-0 lifetime against Beatrice Haddad Maya, who she would meet in the third round. And I think that's the one where Katie could. In Australia, if she gets to the fourth round,
Yep.
that is going to be a
Yep.
nasty
And that's well said.
Jasmine.
Madison has got a very good opportunity to go deep in this thing here again when she faces Rybakina. I like that whole. I like a lot of the stories in this whole side. And again, and with that, I will go down to the bottom half, which I think could be a very, very solid situation on this bottom half of the draw. Iga has some work cut out for her, but I think it's doable. But you heard it right here. I think I already told about Svitolina. I mean, I still think Svitolina has a chance to come through. And you heard it right here. She's got the kind of game that if she takes care of business with Sorana Cirstea, I see her being the one that could possibly derail Jasmine. That's the only thing I will say with that, just because of her game and the way and how just the matchup I've seen from a coaching standpoint. I can see that working.
Yeah, I think this little section here before we get to Iga's section, Iga's part of that quarter. I think there's this little spot here with Emma Navarro in the top half and Daria Kasatkina on the bottom half, right? Of this section of 16 here. And we've talked a lot about Emma lately. We like her trajectory. You mentioned in a previous episode that people are might be starting to figure her out.
Just the level of understanding that you will not be unknown anymore. I think Peyton's going to come out swinging in that match. It's another match it's a great match for Peyton. She couldn't ask for a better first round. Playing a known player, she can swing from the fences. I do feel Emma wins that match fairly handily, just because Peyton's got the big inside out. I think Emma knows how to play pretty much all types. This is a tough UVA versus VTech match for her. You know what I mean? This is a matchup, a first, second round NCAA match for her, where she's playing the other team's top player, but it's pretty much, a done deal. I am more worried about when she comes up against Ons Jabeur, and I see Ons coming out of that, playing her in that, what would that be, third round? Potentially a match. That's, to me, is going to be the real test, because now you have a player that can hang with you, that can hit with you, that can handle your junk, that can handle your style. And this is going to be a test of, can Emma come out and flat out beat me? And I think what we've seen with Ons in the past, again, provided she's healthy and she's sharp, which we don't know, both those are question marks, Ons has the craftiness to outcraft Emma. And that, to me, is the matchup I look forward to. When you start looking at some of the other matchups, again, you got some other players right behind that, Maria Sakkari in particular, that could do some nice up over to that matchup going into Kasatkina. I don't know, man. I just feel like Ons Jabeur just jumps out at me as, dude, don't sleep on that match.
So I agree with you in a sense that Ons is playing good tennis right now. Like she actually in the last few weeks she's playing in tournaments. She semifinaled some event last week, one of the warm-up events. I think she's shaken off whatever the injuries that she was that were plaguing her in the back end of last year. So I think she's in a good place right now. I just don't think it's going to be Emma Navarro that she's playing in that third round match. I do think it's actually going to be Peyton Stearns.
You think Peyton beats Emma? Wow.
I think Peyton beats Emma in the first round because, Emma's been a little. I mean, she straightened up this week, but I can't see her forever going up and to the right. Right? She progressively did better from Australian to French to Wimbledon, Wimbledon to U.S. Open. She did a round better every single tournament last year, and so they were always saying if there was one more Grand Slam, she's going to put herself in the final. And I'm like, it doesn't. Success isn't always linear. There has to be a stumble somewhere, and I feel like Peyton knows her. They obviously they're in USTA together. They Team USA. that level of familiarity is going to, I think, make whatever aura or mystique around Emma disappear. Peyton probably sees her as a peer. Like Peyton, number one player, national champ at Texas. She's like just as good as she was coming out of college. I think Peyton's gonna go full tilt. I think this is a winnable match for her, and I think this is the one where Emma goes, "This is a match that now I'm supposed to win. I'm supposed to win," and I'm almost willing to bet that Peyton has actually beaten her in practice sets before. Could be wrong. I'm guessing, but I feel like the familiarity level is gonna make this one, like anything that's happened before this, call it even. I think Peyton Stearns is actually going to win this match.
I'm going to counter that 1,000%. Adam Gusky is a good friend of mine. He'll find this story amusing. He used to tell me all the time about how he would beat Peter Korda in practice sets. He would tell me that there was a few times where, but in actual matches, in tournaments, Peter would rip his throat out. He would always talk about how Pete Sampras would lose practice sets to no names. And then these guys wouldn't get games. He would break them 3 times in sets. And so I say that to say, I hear you, I'm with you, I got it. However, and I think Peyton's got a beautiful future ahead of her. I really do. She reminds me a lot of Jen Brady. I love her game. I love her freewheeling style. I like a lot of things about her. I just don't think that she will beat Emma on this stage now. Will it happen? Yes. Could it happen? Always. Will it happen? Is it likely? Is it probable? No. I think this is, my opinion, I think this is her tournament to Emma. I'm speaking of Emma Navarro. Her tournament to break through and to prove. Much like I think it's Jasmine's as well, Paolini's. I see Jasmine stumbling, to your point, more than I see Emma stumbling. I think Emma was just catching fire. I think Paolini shot her wad a little bit. No offense to her. And I say that to say, from what limited I saw of the United Cup, she didn't look that strong. Looked to me like she was coming down off a bit of a good run. I think Emma went into the end of the year playing better. And I say that to say, this to me is an unfortunate meetup for them two, for the same reasons you talked about, because I think Emma has more ways to defend and to beat. And I think Peyton, much like a Jen Brady type, they have to be hitting well and hit big, much like Madison. They have to be hitting well, hitting big, serving big.
Yeah.
But you're playing against a girl that has a lot of tools and a lot of ways to defend that. So to me, on a coaching matchup, everything being equal, both of them being healthy, fit, and ready to go, if they're both playing well, you got to give it to the counter punisher in that matchup, because it comes down to that, assuming nothing else is there, nothing else pre-existing, nothing else, crazy, and a lingering injury or two, all things being equal, to me, I see this being her tournament. Now, if she were up and down, if she were a Madison, had Father Time's not been kind, has an injury or two kind of lingering, I totally get your point. I just don't, in my opinion, not now, not right now.
Okay.
2 years from now, or a year and a half from now, when it's more linear, when there's a few more wins under Peyton's belt, 1,000%. I think this is a matchup to me where you're going to start seeing, in my opinion, some of these players really starting to take form. Emma, to me, showed me a lot in that last year's U.S. Open. She showed me this may be a surprise to you. It's not a surprise to me. And I think that there's a mental concept to me that I think that she's really starting to show people, buddy, I've been there, done that, and I'm ready. I'm seasoned. You know what I mean? And she came right into the tour kind of, I'm going to reference another longtime college player who did some great things and stepped out in his first couple of snaps. Michael Penix, when he stepped out there with the Falcons, showed up like he's been there. Don't know what y'all saw. Don't know what y'all thought, but I've been ready. Don't think I've been on the sidelines here, twiddling my thumbs. I'm ready to go at the moment I get my shot. And that to me is what Emma showed me in that regard. So Peyton, again, we're going to hear from her for a long time. I just don't know if she has the momentum, the belief, and the skill set right now. She's a little more monochromatic in terms of her game style. And I think when you get that happening with a player, I don't see when you have what's that term? Technicolor. You know what I mean? When you got Technicolor, to me, Emma's Technicolor, and my girl is a little more monochromatic at this point in her career and her game.
That's fair. Before we get to Iga section, you said something about Emma Navarro that reminded me of something you said in a previous episode. You use the phrase counter punisher as opposed to counter puncher. Can you tell me what you mean by counter punisher?
So the game continues to evolve, right? The 3 game styles used to be, right? Aggressive baseliner, serve and volley, or all court game, and of course your counter puncher. I think this is a throwback to the late 80s, early 90s, when you had players like a Michael Chang that would just get a lot of your balls back. In my era, we called them retrievers, pushers in the juniors that turn into, what I call pushers with power, which is really what your counter puncher is. Somewhere along the lines, we had 3 players that changed the counter puncher and started to merge a whole different style of player. And that is Leighton Hewitt. Leighton brought out the ability to hurt you on the run, almost to the point where he needed to be ran to hurt you. And he was almost so good at it that it became something that if you weren't careful, it was something that to run him, you almost ran him at your peril. He was one player here. There's a second player that I think that was really good at hitting you on the run. That was one, James Blake. You did not want to give James Blake an on-the-run forehand. He was so good at it and so money that he became the type of player that, again, on the run was deadly. We now get into the quintessential counter punisher, one Novak Djokovic. And Novak has been the quintessential player with the ability to not just hurt you on the run. What does every aggressive baseliner do? They look for a chance to take away time and to take the big shot. Well, what happens? At that moment, you're vulnerable. Picture boxing. When you are that guy going for the uppercut, once I duck and hit, going for the knockout blow, the Widowmaker. If I duck and hit you with an uppercut, you at that moment are vulnerable. And the counter punisher hurts you at that time. It is a fact that the counter punisher has the ability to hurt you when you think you're hurting them. Novak will wait. He will wait until you go for that shot. Take your inside out. I'm hitting this backhand down the line. You know it and I know it, and I'm just waiting until you do it. So much that if you do not take your inside out, he's just going to wait and go inside and go backhand to backhand with you because he knows you can't do anything else. So what the counter punisher can do, but you have to be good at it. The counter punisher now brings this new level of backdoor offense to the game that you did not see coming because they're so unbelievably good at countering. The great returner can counter punish a good server and take away not only the first strike, but really put you in defense off the first ball. And that's not something most big servers like. That's why you haven't seen the big servers dominate the game in the last 10 years, because the great returns have nullified all that. Right? I think Yannick has brought in a lot of, he's been a quiet big server because he hits spots very well. But you start seeing a lot of these guys, you don't see the Andy Roddick types and these top big Riley Opelka types that have just taken over with the serve because the returns have been too big. So that's what the counter punisher is. On the second line of that, the aggressive baseliner has had to become more patient. They can't be so monochromatic. And there's even a new style merging, which I haven't fully, the Sith is still in secret right now. The Sith is still coming around, is what I'm going to call the morph. And this style has been brought in by one of my all-time favorites, Gail Monfils. And Gail is the retriever slash big server. And I think he has been embodied even more so by the Daniil Medvedev types. I think there's a few others that have known to be retrievers that can still serve you off the court, but still grind when they need to. And that morph style, which is the patient, aggressive baseliner, right, is coming there. And then to me, the all-court player has now morphed. They're still all-court, but we're going to call them, we called them junk ballers back in my day. These are the players that can just carve you up. Mahova is a very classy version of this. Ons Jabeur is a very tactical, handsy version of this. I'm trying to remember the player from a few years back that had really good slice backhand and moved the ball around. Also from somewhere there in North Africa, Middle East. I forget her name. Pretty crafty. I'm forgetting her name for some reason, but had very similar game back then. Sonia Mirza was very similar to this, had a really nice forehand, nice backhand slice, really just kind of played almost. Conchita Martinez was one of these kind of players back in the day. They just had the ability to move the ball around and not give you the ball that you wanted. And that, to me, is where these styles, we're always trying to put a certain style in a bucket. And the player continues to morph and make that bucket be a little bit different because the classic way didn't work. They brought their own little bit to it.
I think we've talked about this rock, paper, scissors versions of players. And I think that's, we'll get to Iga's section here and wrap up the women's, but I think putting a pin in that rock, paper, scissors of game style,
right,
probably for another full-on episode after the Australian Open. I think it's worth getting some space to really fully talk about from a coaching standpoint, like what are the different types of game styles and how do they match up against the others, and who are the archetypes on both the men's and women's sides for those particular styles. All right, finishing up here with the very, very bottom section, Iga's part of the draw. I think Iga coming out of here is pretty straightforward. You do have a lot of former Grand Slam champions lurking, right? You've got Azarenka as a potential fourth round matchup. You've got you've also got two players that I want to talk about a good bit here is like obviously Amanda Anisimova.
And another great backhand, Katie Volinets. Who could run into Iga at the same time frame, and to your point about Grand Slam winners, you cannot rule out Emma Raducanu. You know what I'm saying? So you've got while like Layla, I still haven't seen either of them get back to this level of tennis in a while. But she ain't not playing. She ain't terrible. I mean, and I say that not in a way to be left-handed compliment, speaking to a lefty, but it's in a way to say you've just got, in my opinion. I'm good friends with Melanie Udan. I'm talking to players about when Melanie Udan played Caroline Wozniacki in the semi quarter. I think it was semi of the U.S. Open some years ago. 100%. She beat a lot of good Russian players that year. But ironically, each one of them had similar game style. They were the aggressive baseliners.
Okay.
The counter puncher / counter punisher. Mel had a phenomenal slice, good feel, kept that ball nice and low on the ball, and these tall, big, 5'10", 5'11", 6 foot shoots. Sarapova's about 6'2". Tall, big hitting girls could not go through Mel without missing some balls. And that, to me, until she ran into a player that did not bring too much pace. Now, enter my Iga Swiatek, I forgot to say her name. Is now she runs into Katie Volinets, who has that kind of game. I think Alexandrova has very similar. I can hang with you and handle your power. I look at, of course, Emma, very similar type game. So these are kind of, should she get past obviously Ekaterina, I see a lot of these players that have the ability to make Iga go for more than she's comfortable going for. She hits balls on the rise, but anybody that's balls on the rise and you get a ball without much pace, it's always a dicey affair, right? Because you're not using pace, and now you have to be the one to create the pace. Can she do it? Of course she can. She's number one in the world player. But is she going to have her hands full? A lot more than we think. And then as I look forward to kind of seeing as that draw kind of opens up, I would love to see Amanda Anisimova kind of come out of that section of it to face Iga. Love to see her if she's healthy, playing some good tennis, she has a chance. But as you look at to me, that top half, Alvin, to me, is ripe with a bunch of players that you don't know. Maria Sakkari is a former top 10 in the world player. You know what I mean? That has gone deep in some runs. I mean, you've got a lot of players here that I don't see. McCartney Kessler, there's a shout out to McLean's sister that played at Florida. I mean, you've got a lot of a good player from a little north of where we are right now. So shout out to our Georgia types over here. But I say there's a lot of different players coming out of this section of the draw that you haven't necessarily heard of or haven't heard from in a while. But this draw has a lot of minefields in it for the Eagles and for the Emma Navarros. And I think while it's not as strong as, say, quarter two, this quarter four is for the matchups, more for the matchups than the actual names themselves. This quarter four could be some tough sledding, for some of these players.
I think my one question mark in Iga's small section down here is Amanda. If we get Amanda versus Iga in round 3, I think that'll be fun. I think Amanda's probably end up playing Alexandra in the second round, and recent form would just tell me Alexandra. It's a recent form versus pedigree, right? Like Amanda has made the semifinals of a Grand Slam before, like she's no joke, but she hasn't been playing much lately. And then, the question mark I have is around Kalinskaya, right? So she kind of hit the scene last year at this event. I think she quarterfinaled it, and then had a really good spring after that. So she's coming up on a lot of points to defend here, right? So if she fashions herself as a perennial top 15 player,
100%,
right, then I think the first step is to then defend these points.
She's in Jasmine Paolini's group where she's now has to come out this year firing and prove she can do it again. 100%.
She got to prove it. You got to prove it.
Yep.
I think it's Kalinskaya, it's Paolini, it's Navarro. It's like those are your players who kind of broke out last year. Like, okay, do you want me to? If I'm sitting in this chair next year having the same conversation with you, I'm not throwing shade at Emma Navarro talking about she's going to get beat by first round by a player ranked 50 something in the world, right?
I just don't know. Their second years are going to tell us a lot, in my opinion. And look at and talk about a Maria Sakkari. She's a player that came out, nice run the first couple of years, and then, wasn't quite able to kind of have the same run. Again, injuries and whatnot notwithstanding, hadn't had some of the same results. And when you make that nice breakout, and people don't understand this about tennis, and I think it's important, we made a comment about this as far as the level of players today that would not have been a seed or would not have been top 32 in the world. They were say if they played 10 years ago, because the way the draw works out, they'd have been 50 in the world, and that 50 in the world now makes them face that seed 1 to 2 rounds earlier, right? And so therefore they don't get past that top player, and there were so many more top players to play. With that said, if they don't defend, if they stub their toe, they could be a 50 and out player very quickly once those points roll off. And so that's why it's such an important thing, because now you have 1 or 2 tournaments where you have the ability to break into the top 16 and get that top seed, have that better draw. But buddy, if you don't, you are back into the throes and you are facing one of those top 4 in the first or second round. And that's what, to your point, it's fun. It makes it fun. But buddy, parity is an absolute. It's oxygen. It's everywhere.
But that kind of leads me to my question. Not a question. It's more of a thought exercise, right? Like someone like Maria Sakkari, right?
Yep.
Who I think got as high as maybe 8, 7 in the world very recently. She's been top 10 the last 3 years, but never got past that. She never got past the hump that JPEG just got past in the U.S. Open, right? Where I continue to get to the quarterfinals of big events, but no further. I'm starting to show that this is my ceiling, right?
Yep.
JPEG went through the glass ceiling, made the finals of a Grand Slam, right? So we look at her differently now. I think the other side of that coin is Maria Sakkari, who never got past that. I think some of that blood in the water, some of that self-doubt has finally started to set in and metastasize as wow, this is my ceiling. Now everyone else who has the ability to do better is now passing me. So like if a player gets to 10 in the world but doesn't have top 10 tennis, how it seems like it's hard to maintain between 10 and 20.
It's hard to go. It's hard to do. I will also say testament to the young players coming up who bump you out, right? You never lose per se. You get bumped out, right? And then therefore those players with points and other things can go past you, go through you in some cases. I think that's the hard part. Um, and which makes tennis so darn tough. I still think tennis is one of the toughest sports in the world for that reason. Um, you can be a good player on a basketball team, have a nice run for 2 months and be a scoring leader, have a slump for 2 months and still be on a championship team. You can be playing the best tennis of your life for 3 months in
Right.
tennis,
Yeah.
have a bad draw, a bad match, and that affect you for the next 6 months, and you are starting back at zero the next year. So, and to my point, and that's just the nature of the game. Nobody to carry you, no team, no bench player to come in and play for you. And so I say that to say it's a very, very difficult thing to happen. I don't think Sakari just didn't have the extra matches to go through. You remember Simona Halep. Simona Halep, to me,
Yeah, of course.
did what Jessica Pegula is now doing 5-7 years ago, right? Broke through, had a great showing, undersized and so on. We get all that, but came through and was playing top 3 tennis in the world, right? To your point, nowhere to go if you can't maintain that. And I think to a lesser degree, Sakari did something very similar. I have a lot of respect for these kind of players. I call that player a little bit past their prime. Now, that's not to say that she's not still a good player. I just talked about Cirstea and some other players that were playing, and Svitolina, Azarenka, while we're talking about it, that are a little past their prime. But you know and I know they are nobody's preference on a first or second or third round draw. And so that, to me, I put those players in the
Right.
dangerously iceberg category. If you're a player, a new minted player at that, inside the top 10, top 20, because buddy, they are titanium tipped icebergs. They are players where they're not necessarily on the ship to take you to the finals. But buddy, make no mistake, they are forged. They have been there. They are a little bit salty, a little bit with a little bit of chip on the shoulder. And provided they are healthy and playing sharp, that player is nobody's first, second round matchup to play against. And that's why I'm saying Iga's half has a lot of titanium tipped icebergs in it, because she, in my opinion, who has a lot to prove this year, especially on the hard court, I think Iga has the toughest draw for her coming out of this half with all of these players, because to your point, she feels like she should beat him. And I think Iga is the only player on this half of the draw that feels like she should. I loved your point earlier about Emma and Peyton. I just didn't think it fit Emma and Peyton. I think it 1000% fits Iga. And now Iga, as that top player in the world, she can't look past all these players, especially with a lot of them that she's going to have to go through and beat. She can't just rely on errors. She can't just rely on their power to out-hit them or counter them. She, again, a counter punisher. But when you're not being aggressively attacked, that goes away. You now have to downshift into your B game at the very least, right? Rock, paper, scissors. We both put out rock. My rock's got to be stronger than your rock.
I think with Iga though, I think she is so hardened at this point as a champion and as a player that there is a profile of players that she loses to.
Yeah.
But there are only like 3 players in the world that fit that profile. Like, she doesn't take bad losses against a player like that. You know what I mean? Like, she's like Katie Valiant.
Make no mistake.
Right. Exactly. So, like, Katie Valianet's, like, I first saw Katie Valianet's last year at the Australian Open. I was like, oh, who is this girl? Like, I love her game. First round, had a really good match, great showing. But she just, she's going to have to
go through 100%.
At some point, you're going to have to go through Iga. Like, she might hit 56 unforced errors in a match. Like, she might. She'll also hit like 60 winners. And if you're going to beat her, at some point, you're going to have to go get it. And I don't think Katie has not showed that to me quite yet. Iga, she has earned that benefit of the doubt. Like, Iga doesn't lose first week of Grand Slams often, and I don't think she's going to start now.